Asteroid of fear.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Men of the House podcast. And on today's episode, I have with me Len May, and we're going to talk about all things cannabis. And I'm excited because I always like to know more, and I've been advocating for probably at least 30 years on this topic. And for me, cannabis and edibles was something I used to get myself from like 9 prescriptions to 2. So it, I believe it's a tool and a medicine. But how are you doing today, Lynn?
I'm great.
Awesome. Well, let's start off with give us a little bit of your background, a little bit of maybe like where you grew up, what you thought you were going to do, and then kind of how transition into how you got into cannabis.
Yeah, so I appreciate you having me on. I think it's a great opportunity to talk not just about cannabis itself, but really why cannabis? What is with this plant, and what does it have to do with our bodies, and why do we have this interaction? So I'll get into that. But I take you back. I was born in Lithuania, so I'm an immigrant. I came to this country when I was about 6 years old, and my family settled in Philadelphia. And when I was going to school, finally learned language, whatever, I would sit in class, teacher would call on me, and I wasn't really paying attention. My mind was elsewhere. So I always had all these thoughts of floating around my head. And when I was a teenager, I got diagnosed with ADD. So you have a disorder, you have an attention deficit disorder. So now I have this label of I have something wrong with me. They put me on prescription medication. And I can't say that it didn't work. Like, it did help me to focus some of it, but I lost touch with self, if that makes any sense. Like, there was no emotion or anything like that. So it was sort of walking around in a zombie state. And I was going to school in like 8th grade, I think, and I was hanging out with these kids who were sort of cool. They asked me if I wanted to smoke a cigarette. I was like, yeah, man, I'm hanging out with the cool kids. They're going to smoke a cigarette. So they never questioned why they only have one cigarette, which is interesting. But there was like 4 of us, I think, and they're passing a cigarette around. I take a drag, and I was dabbling in cigarettes at that time. So take a drag, and didn't taste like a cigarette really. It tasted a little weird. Took another one, maybe had a cough or so, and they're laughing at me. I'm like, what? And they put cannabis weed in the cigarette. So when I went back to class, the windows that were in my head sort of narrowed. I could focus. I'm like, okay. Then my goal was to try to get cannabis to see if it'll work, and it was working, over time. So I got off all my prescription meds and started using cannabis whenever I could get it, socially with friends. But I never told anybody that this was sort of a therapeutic for me. My parents didn't like it, and over the years they would catch me and make threats. And at one point, when I was just about 18, my parents, we made a deal where I don't bring it in the house. My dad didn't want it in the house, so I left my little thing of weed in my car. I wake up in the morning, my parents are sitting there with my little pouch with my cannabis and my pipes, whatever. And like, you went to my car. Well, I told you not to bring it in the house. I'm like, what was in my car? It's not in the house. What's on my property? Blah, blah, blah. What are we going to do with you? And I'm a rebellious kid. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. I don't know if you can curse in your podcast or not.
Whatever you want.
I don't give a fuck. So they're like, well, what if we call the cops? I'm like, call the fucking cops. And they did. My parents actually called the cops on me and try to get me arrested. So 2 female officers come in, and they're like, I only had a little bit of cannabis with me. So like, they threw it out and whatever. And they were lecturing me. And I'm like, listen, if you want to, arrest me, I'm under 28 grams, a misdemeanor, the paperwork, I'll just sign myself out. They're like, he's a smart ass. If it was my son, I would kick him to the curb. So they left. My dad said, you have 5 minutes to get your shit. Got my stuff, and kicked me out. The irony of this is that my parents both consume formulations that my company patented for their conditions now. But through that journey, of being homeless, basically, I stayed in motel rooms, couch surfed, and then I think I was just graduating high school, and I was going to go to college, and I had to pay. And anyway, there was a record store called Tower Records back in the
Hmm.
day, which is my favorite music store. I used to go there all the time. They had a job opening, so I got a job at Tower Records, and I was working at Tower Records. One of the perks was you get paid $7 an hour at that time, but you get to go to different events and stuff. So I got to go to this festival called the Horde Festival with Blues Traveler, Black
Hmm.
Crows, Ziggy Marley, and all that. And there was a group of kids. They had a banner called the Cannabis Action Network. And so I'm like, hey, man, cool. What are you guys doing? Like, we're registering people to vote. I'm like, awesome, man. I'm already registered. What else are you doing? That was it. So I became the president of the Cannabis Action Network. I held a rally at Independence Hall in Philadelphia, and I was an activist. I started like focusing a lot of my efforts on legalization, and at some point in college, I was going to school for physical therapy,
Okay.
and I started an internet company in 1992, three, some of that. Ended up exiting out of that, decided I don't want to be a physical therapist. And I was dabbling, I was working in music. My ex-wife said to me, she was my girlfriend at the time. She said I have to get a real job. So I actually went to work for Price Waterhouse at the time. So it's a big change between, cannabis
Yeah.
and PW, and then it was PWC. I used to have long hair. I know it's people that can see me. It's hard to imagine, but I used to have long hair, earrings. I had to put my hair in a ponytail, wear the suit and tie, and all that stuff. And then, I proceeded through my corporate career. I worked for a venture capital company, Safeguard Scientific. Then I became a commercial real estate broker, worked for Keller Williams Commercial, and moved to LA. Moved to California about 15 years ago. And I was sitting in a real estate office, and these guys came in. And they wanted to open an alternative pharmacy. At the end of the day, we started talking. They really wanted to open up a dispensary.
Right.
So I was like, "Where's your paperwork? What do you have?" And throughout my life, I kept consuming cannabis, and I kept learning as much as I possibly could. Read everything there was to read, PubMed and everything else. So I helped them open up their dispensary. They offered me a partnership. So we ended up opening up 5 dispensaries under the same brand called Kush Kingdom in Orange County. And one of the things I started noticing was 2 people would consume the same chemical variety of cannabis and have a completely different experience.
Yeah.
So my ADD kind of kicked in. I saw a video by a guy named Kevin McKernan, who claimed to be the first person genetically sequenced the plant. So long story, a little bit longer, connected with Kevin, started working for their company called Medicinal Genomics. And my job was to go around and get plant material from different cultivators around the country and Canada, bring to my lab, extract the DNA, and sequence it. So yeah, I can actually see what the genetics of that is. So the names that we kept giving these plants, like say it's Blue Dream. I have 5 samples of Blue Dream. They're called Blue Dream. When I sequence
Right.
them, 2 of them are pretty much Blue Dream genetically. The other 2 have Blue Dream in them, but they're not Blue Dream. And the 5th one is not even close. They're just slapping a name on that. So
Right.
once I started learning that genetics of the plant make a difference, like what it is that you're communicating to the consumer, the parent company of this company that I was consulting with was a pharmacogenomics company. So they did human genetic testing on how drugs affect individuals, metabolic function, drug-to-drug interaction, et cetera.
Right.
I got really into the human side of genetics, and one day I had a kind of an idea that said, light bulb moment. You have human genetics here, you have plant genetics here. Let's bring those 2 together and maybe guide people to a personalized experience. They ended up closing down the human side, just focusing on the plant. So I got lucky. I got some really good scientists, much smarter people than me, to come with me and launch my company in 2017, EndoDNA. So that's sort of my background history.
Man.
Long-winded way, but I
No,
can
that's
give you more
super
snippets.
cool. That's like it makes me think kind of the correlation between um the food testing, allergies and whatnot, that they're seeing what plants, what stuff from the ground you're sensitive to. And so yeah, that's pretty cool. So interestingly enough, thinking as you're going through this, similarly with me, although I was on SSRIs for depression, I found that I just felt flat. I didn't feel any emotion at all. Like I guess when you were taking prescriptions for ADHD. And when I got off of them, I was like, man, I would cry a lot. I go, but at least I'm feeling. And, the cannabis was kind of that thing that I would say gave me that 10-second delay so I wouldn't react when things would normally kind of upset me. But yeah, I can remember as an undergrad, and this has got to be early 2000s, we were studying Healthy People 2010 at the time. And I wrote a paper on the use of cannabis and why it should be legal. So that was the early 2000s. But what was it like for you arriving in California and the legality of it all? How did it shift, open up? Now you're not having to deal with dealers,
Yeah.
whatever. Um, what also did that, how did it allow you to expand what you were already no um kind of looking at, I guess, besides opening up to research?
Yeah. So it's a really good question because first of all, I was one of those dealers. I
Right,
would, in order for me to get cannabis, and I would get some, I would sell some so I can get my own and all that
right.
stuff. So I was doing that, and there was a lot of stress. And I remember somebody came to me and they had a deal where they were going to get like a truckload of weed from Arizona, and I was like, nah, it's too risky for me. And I was watching the news. I saw the people that came to me. They got busted. One of the largest busts in Pennsylvania history of cannabis. I'm like, I got to be out of
Escape that
that.
one.
It's yeah, exactly. So moving to California, moving to Los Angeles, going to an actual dispensary, going to a doctor, getting a card at that time. My back hurts. Okay, and I actually got lucky because I had a legitimate doctor the first time I visited. My card, I think, cost $250 at that time.
Hmm.
And he actually did a medical exam, got my details from my past MRIs or whatever I had, and said that this card I'm giving you, it wasn't a card, it was like a paper. I can go and support you in court if anything happens because I
Okay.
did a legitimate job. So I was like, man, most people didn't get that. So I had a little bit of a different experience. But walking into a dispensary, I was like, mind blowing. I was like, that is exactly how it should be. I go in, I'm of age, I have a condition, I'm
Right.
going in and I get the sample. But at that time, it's the Wild West, cash business. You have jars of weed everywhere. We didn't have, concentrates. We didn't have all these different gummies. All that stuff wasn't available. It just started coming in after a while. So I thought it was interesting. It was wild, but I also found that there's this dichotomy of people who actually are sick. So we have people coming in with their kids who are on the spectrum, we're taking
Hmm.
this as medicine. And then the same thing, we were the exclusive home of corrupt Kush and Method Man's Black Eyed OG. So we had a really, yes, it's medical, but we had a really hip hop kind of focus in our dispensary. So how many of them actually needed quote unquote medicine? I don't know, but
Right.
it's up to the individual. They're an adult; they can make their own decisions. I thought to take it whatever, but my focus was I was trying to figure out how cannabis can affect different people in different ways, and I really took a deep dive into understanding the endocannabinoid system, and that was really what changed for me. Understanding that we have this system and how cannabis interacts with that system individually is how it affects us differently from different people. And this plant can accentuate some genetic predispositions that we have. Maybe it'll make some people like THC also works as an analgesic. So sometimes it blocks the feeling
Right.
of pain for people. But for some people, it actually accentuates that feeling. So getting an understanding of how individuals work and trying to put everything together, and then it expanded, and we're working with a lot of people that had cancer, but also cannabis was suggested as a last resort for them. So it's not an entry like hey, let's try cannabis early on. They're like, you have 6 months to live. I might as well try everything. And that was extremely frustrating. And the good news is that we extended lives of people, gave them better quality of life over
Right.
time. But I always had this question of why. Why is it working? Why is it not working for these people? So that's when I really started diving more into the clinical trials and the observational studies and all the research that we've done to date.
Yeah, especially I'm I'm an edible fan, and edibles are definitely one of those things that the consistency or inconsistency can be a thing. There's when THCO, because I live in Texas, so we have the Delta 8 variety, and we had THCO for a while, and they had these space rings that were 250 milligrams, and for some people they would wipe them out. I could take two of them and they would do nothing. But I could take 100 milligrams of this herb extract ones that were a Delta 9, 10 milligrams each. I would take 100 milligrams of that and it would wipe me out. And so I've always found it interesting that, not only do you have like sativa hybrids and indicas that impact you different, but then, like you said, you're kind of taking it even a level deeper. Now, when you take some of these things, like when you're looking at it, you're looking at why it affects people different. Now, what do you do with the information? Is this stuff you would take into the dispensary? And when you talk to people, you get a feeling for what it is they want to utilize it for, and you give them a trial. And kind of like, I come from a medical background. I'm running clinics, and, you know, the first antidepressant I took didn't take. So you went to a second one. So is that how you utilize the information, or are we trying to do something more to increase legalization across all the states? What's kind of the goal with getting down to the nitty gritty and taking a deep dive into the why?
Yeah, I mean, legalization is something that I'm passionate about, but we're contributing to the global research and studies. So that,
Mhm.
meeting with the DEA and FDA, that's fine, but we're just providing them information. So indirectly, yes, but let me just kind of explain how the testing works and what we do. I
Okay.
think just to give you a visual. So it's EndoDNA. We have an endocannabinoid system test. It's a DNA test that similar to like your ancestry or your 23andMe. You have you go to your healthcare professional. You can also buy it online. It can come to your home. There's a buccal swab. You swab the inside your cheek. You register it because we're HIPAA compliant and
Hmm.
GDPR compliant. You set up your profile. You mail the sample back to the lab. It'll take 2 to 4 weeks to get your results. You'll get pinged that your email, that your results are ready through an email. You log in and you get your results. You can also take the raw data from 23andMe, from Ancestry, and anything else. You can upload that, and it'll give you results. So the results look at genetic biomarkers that are directly or indirectly associated with the endocannabinoid system. So to use your example about edibles, let's say that edibles affect people in different ways, which they do. And let's say that somebody's um, an, a poor metabolizer. So if
Okay.
you're a poor metabolizer and you're taking your, 50 milligram or 25 milligram of Delta 9 THC, the onset may be slower. It may
Hmm.
be a lot more powerful and may actually last a lot longer. If somebody is an ultra rapid metabolizer, you're metabolizing really quickly and you may need a higher dose and you're creating expensive urine. So I'm an ultra rapid metabolizer of CBD,
Hmm.
and a dropper full of CBD on a tincture doesn't do much for me because I'm injecting it and peeing it out. But if I'm taking more of that, now I have some efficacy that's associated with that. So to give you that, continue that example is, so you're a poor metabolist, you're having this experience, but you also have some genetic predispositions to stress reactivity or PTSD. So by taking that and having that experience, it can turn on the switches of anxiety. Now you're feeling anxious. Now you're experiencing PTSD because you're remembering, oh, this happened to me 6 months ago, and you're in this loop. So by understanding your genetic predispositions, we can give people your personalized GPS for life, and you
Mhm.
can avoid your own potholes that are in your road. So an example would be, like you mentioned, indica sativa. Well, the amount of THC is a very narrow therapeutic window. So for some people, if you get it just right, now it's a therapeutic, it's a therapeutic product. For some people, now you get too much, you have a free radical of anandamide, which is an endogenous endocannabinoid, something that we develop ourselves, and that's what gives us that euphoric high when we secrete that from our brain. But when you're getting this experience, then for some people, it can be a very intense experience. And what you want to do is you want to mitigate their possible adverse events. So all the way through to give you a ratio, like here's the cannabinoid and terpene profile that may be just right for you. And terpenes are really important as well. They're the essential oils that the plant produces. So understanding that certain terpenes, like I'll give you an example, beta-caryophyllene, that's also found in clove and black pepper, it
Mhm.
has an affinity for the CB2 receptor, which helps to regulate immune response. So inflammation that's caused by, maybe stress, extra cortisol in your bloodstream, that beta-caryophyllene works really good with CBD, and it helps to reduce that inflammation. While the THC may be working as an analgesic to help to reduce the feeling of the pain, while it's actually going to the root source of what's causing the pain to begin with. So once you have your right ratio, now the way you get the products is you look at the certificate of analysis, so the test
Mhm.
results of the product, and you run that through an algorithm to show you how closely a product matches the suggested ratio for your product. So if it's in a state like Texas, the only thing that I can do is I can give you your ideal cannabinoid and terpene profile is this. Now you have to go and try to find what works best for you so you can avoid those possible adverse effects. And the other thing that is also extremely important is drug-to-drug interaction. So there are certain medications that interact with cannabinoids, and we are, one of the only companies that does that. It looks at your prescription medications and sees if there's a possible interaction, and has you talk to your healthcare professional or one of ours. So it's truly a feedback loop. Once you have the products that are more aligned with you, there is a survey, email, and also biometric feedback through a wearable device, how well that product worked for the individual. So it's an interactive treatment plan. If you go to a doctor, when they get the treatment plan, it'll say there's 100 people with similar genetics that took this protocol and has shown that it's efficacious. So it'll be a suggested protocol for the healthcare professional based on that, previous subjects or previous people that went through that same kind of protocol.
Wow. So, man, that's pretty deep. It's wild, one, but two, what I want to ask is when you started off on this and of course, you got to test it. You're not going to sell something you're not going to test yourself.
Mhm.
What did you think? How did it improve your own like cannabis consuming experience when you did it for yourself and others kind of like testimonials in terms of, I guess, maybe hitting sweet spots for whatever it is that's ailing you?
Well, so we don't make any claims about, fixing diseases or
Right.
anything of that nature, but uh, our information is for research use only for healthcare professional and make better decisions. I'm the guinea pig of everything. I take every single test, all the genetic tests, microbiome
Mhm.
tests, everything. So for me, it validated certain things I already knew about myself.
Hey, have you been feeling drained? Has it been a long week? Are you searching for ways to manage your stress and find a little bit more peace? The Podcast Connection Network is here for you. We've got amazing shows on mental health, mindfulness, and all kinds of ways to live a happier, healthier life. Check out the other shows, including mine, Everything's Connected, after this episode. The link is in the description below. Now let's get back to the show.
That I didn't know the details and specificity of why. So if
Okay.
I'm consuming a certain type of product that has a lot of, so I don't have any anxiety markers, but I have some depressive markers. I'm also treatment resistant. So meaning that SSRIs won't work for me if I have to get that. So about 30% of people get prescribed have a treatment-resistant depression gene, but they still get prescribed antidepressants, and it probably won't work for them, and they'll still get all the side effects from the antidepressants. So you have to be able to know this up front, and most psychopharmacologists don't. So for me, I discovered, okay, I know this about myself. I learned that I'm an ultra rapid metabolizer of CBD. That's why CBD wasn't really working for me. I just wasn't taking enough. I also learned that I have this depressive mood marker, and I have to understand I have also seasonal mood challenges. So when I was living in Philly, 4 seasons, and it's winter time, it actually makes me more depressed. And I was suppressing that. I felt it, but I'm like, oh man, I can't stand the wintertime. So I pay the sunshine tax of California now so I can avoid that and get a little more flow. So it's a view into yourself. You get a better understanding of how how things impact you and where the sharp corners are in the room so you can avoid. But to give you an example of sort of a quote unquote testimonial, but I'll call her Grandma Mary. So Grandma Mary she lives in an assisted living facility, and she was diagnosed with cancer, and she was getting chemo. And her doctor actually suggested, try some cannabis because for the side effects of chemo. And she went to a dispensary, and the bud tender there was nice enough to recommend some gummies for Grandma. Grandma went back. She took a gummy, maybe two, I don't remember. And Grandma began to have an intense experience that lasted, according to her, for 2 days. She was so high, and she was hallucinating, and man, really, really awful experience. Now, not only did she have a bad experience, but also having that bad experience, she started telling everybody around her, stay away from devil's lettuce. After taking the DNA test, there's a couple of things that she learned. First of all, she had some drug interactions, so she had to talk to her PharmD. Second of all, she had predisposition to stress reactivity, PTSD, and also a slower level of fear extinction, which means if you have a traumatic event in your life, it's stored in your subconscious. Under great duress, it can pull up that event and bring it to the surface. So you're actually dealing with something that happened, 30 years ago, but it's now under stress. You're having an anxiety situation. So she's a poor metabolizer. She's having all that. So now when she found a ratio, and her ratio, for instance, was a more balanced 1-to-1 CBD to THC, the terpene profile was completely different. It took away like limonene, which is more in sativa dominant hybrids, gives you that boost of dopamine. So more calming terpenes like linalool, that's also found in lavender. So once we had her formulation ratio down, and a method of consumption that's different than first pass consumption, like sublingual, like a tincture or something like that. It changed everything. She would actually walk around. She would go to this chemo where there's multiple people getting their treatment. She would give out our business card to people and say, hey, you got to call these people because they can find a way to relieve and mitigate your side effects of chemo while giving you, not that adverse effect that the cannabis did for her last time. So having a personalized experience is key. And look, our company, we do have a patent endocannabinoid system test. So our patent is on the use of DNA to make recommendations associated with the endocannabinoid system. However, we're a precision wellness company. So the endocannabinoid system test is only one of the tests that we do. We have a menopause biotype for early onset menopause and side effects of menopause. We have a nutrigenomic test looking at personalized supplementation, nutrient deficiencies, and vitamin deficiencies, male hormone test. We even have a dog test for weight issues that are associated with your dog. So the idea is to use DNA to make suggestions that'll empower healthcare professionals in a more collaborative way to work with their patients. So you're both working on the same sheet of paper, basically. Now you know your genetic predispositions, your healthcare professional merges those with blood panels as well, so they can see where you are in terms of actual expression of that. And then you get to make smarter decisions. I'll give you one more example for me. So I get really paranoid or a lot of anxiety when I have to give blood.
Yeah.
So when I get my blood work done, it makes me super stressed. Now, I have a bunch of tattoos, so it's not the needle entering my body. I think it's the blood leaving my body. I don't know what it is, but
I'm the
I've
same.
always been stressed about that. And last time I went to get my blood work, I almost passed out. Like I remember, I may have even passed out. Like I remember they were yelling, "Hey, come here!" And they're like, "You okay?" They gave me some juice. And I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. Now we have to keep doing it. So they stopped because they thought I was going to fall off the chair. So when I came back and got my results, one of the things was my doctor, who's a functional medical professional, said, you have a little bit of high glucose level in your bloodstream. It may be linked to the cortisol level that you excreted because of all the stress that I went through given my blood work. If you're concerned about that, I can prescribe a glucose monitor. You can wear it for several weeks and we'll see. Great, which I did, which was fine. I don't have high blood sugar and all that stuff. However, think about it. If you go to a doctor that's not really educated, that's not collaborating with you, that's
Yeah.
not really a functional medical professional, they get your blood work and they show high glucose level. Well, guess what? They're going to give you medication to reduce your blood sugar, but all it was a moment in time. And that's what a blood test is. It's a moment in time. So if you have low magnesium level or your low iron level, well, maybe that's, in the last 3 months, you changed your diet, you became a vegan and you stopped eating meat. Like all these things are changes. But if you merge those moments in time with your genetic predispositions to your epigenetic expression and do it over time, now you have a much more accurate picture of the individual and you can create a really personalized treatment protocol. And that's our goal.
Don't you think, as you're explaining this and me coming from, especially, I went from emergency medicine to primary care. And in primary care, you're managing that whole picture, the life. You're taking all the components with disease, whatever, absence of disease, that picture of health, and trying to manage that. But it almost seems, I couldn't think of how beneficial it would be if, you come in your first visit to a primary care doctor and you fill out all these papers. You're probably going to get some baseline labs. Why aren't they including all of these different things, And I was going to kind of tie into that as I'm guessing on y'all's side, um, do you have difficulties with insurance paying for it? And it usually has to be cash pay out of pocket. And that's kind of one of the barriers for entry from getting maybe these tests and getting this snapshot. Because, when I think about it, in terms of if I'm the insurance company or the business person, you know, I mean, with healthcare, the system's broken because they keep people sick. They give them this medicine and then they keep you coming back every 3 months so they can check the levels and make sure it didn't damage your kidneys, make sure it didn't damage this or damage that. When all along, kind of like you said, that snapshot might have been off. But the thing is if you have the perfect snapshot and you know how to treat this person as a whole, it may not mean that they're never gonna not take the medicine and the pharmaceutical companies can still benefit because I mean, I was 25, ran 5 miles 3 times a week, exercised religiously, um, but I had high blood pressure at 25. It just kind of was what it was. So that's one of the prescriptions. I used to take two blood pressure medications. I now take one. But part of that's because of the cannabis, I imagine, and losing weight. But it's like, I think getting that snapshot, you people knowing what foods to eat, knowing what medicines to take, not take. And then if you were in a state that would kind of work hand in hand with PCPs and they would consider cannabis as a medicine the same way when I go to my doctor and they're like, okay, here's your singular and here's your losartan, you know? Um, Yeah, those were all the thoughts that come to mind, but does that make sense? And
Yeah.
is insurance one of the issues that you guys have? I mean, is this something you guys would like to see where kind of this is the starting point for any sort of wellness, and then you embark on your health journey? Because let's face it, the healthier you are, the healthier are the people around us. The better you feel, the more impact you go out, the more vigor you attack your passions with, and the better the world is.
Yeah, no, you're completely on point with that. It's insurance. So what our classification for our DNA test is
Hmm.
RUO, research use only. So it is a test that it's not covered by insurance,
Right.
nor and I believe the standard of care should be that whole genome, like
Hmm.
the country of Iceland has every single person that's in that country does a DNA test, and they have your genetics. They look at your genetic predispositions.
We do too, only if you're a felon.
Yeah, that's true too. Maybe that's the way to do it, man. Let's all commit. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So insurance is a big part of that. And you said it right. I mean, the misalignment of how the pharmaceutical industry and how healthcare professionals look at medicine, there's a misalignment. So if the idea is, okay, my goal as a healthcare professional is to help cure a patient. I'm going to work in conjunction with my partners who are pharmaceutical companies and nutrigenomics, nutrient companies. I'm going to work on creating something that'll help cure this individual. Well, that's not the case. The case is do no harm,
Keep them coming
right?
back.
Right. Do no harm and get them on the best subscription model that exists in the world. You're on the cycle. Once you start,
They're like
you're
Columbia
on.
House Records.
It's better, man. It's better because it never ends.
Because they're
Because
still alive. Columbia House is not.
exactly, if you think about it, if you look at stock performance,
Yeah.
even when we have, the real estate market fell, even oil companies are down, but the pharmaceutical companies are not. You're feeling anxious about your future? We have a pill for that. You feel a little depressed? We have a pill for that too. Oh shit, that's giving you some side effects? Don't worry, we got a pill for that as well. I'm not a basher of the pharma industry. I'm saying that we need to work together, and I think doctors, like functional medical professionals, integrated medical professionals. The idea is let's figure out a way how to merge maybe Eastern medicine with
Yeah.
Western medicine and look at the root cause. And cannabis, whether it's a medicine or not a medicine, according to the definition of the FDA, it has to go to clinical trials. There's only one single medication that's cannabis associated, which is Epidiolex, now owned by Jazz Pharmaceuticals for Dravet syndrome or seizure disorder in kids. If you're not going to treat it as a medicine because it hasn't gone through those clinical trials yet, well, at the very least, you can treat it as a supplement. You can treat it as a therapeutic product. If I go to my vitamin store and I'm going to get my supplement, well, if I'm getting it in LA or I'm getting it in Houston or I'm getting it in Philly, there's a label. All the ingredients are the same. It has oversight, and I know what I'm putting in my body. Until the cannabis industry gets out of dark ages and has that oversight and that consistency, we're still going to be looked at as with all the stigma associated with that. So the idea is to be able to use, yes, I agree with you. DNA testing should be a standard, whole genome, but also you have your genetic predispositions. Now, how is that changing? Like if you have a protocol and a doctor gives you, here's what I suggest you should take, including pharmaceuticals. Now we have to come back and measure how that's working for you. So you can have epigenetic methylation testing. You can look at your biological age and reduce your biological age based on the protocol. So you're always looking to see how that's working for you. And you're in collaboration with your healthcare professional because you're both aligned on the same mission. My mission is to see how can I reduce my biological age. So I'm 52, biologically I'm 47. And according to some markers, there's different biological ages. My goal is let's get me down to 40 so I can buy myself better health span. And then how do I do that? Well, here's your protocol. Well, then I'll come back, swab myself and measure myself again. All right, so it reduced, or maybe it increased. So now I have to modify my protocol. So it's an interactive treatment protocol with your healthcare professional that gets modified as you're checking how well that's working for you. That's ideal what you want to do. The challenge of adoption is, as you said, insurance. Well, insurance doesn't cover that. So if insurance doesn't cover that, now you're actually providing that benefit to people that can afford that. And that's really the challenge. Not that this is not an affordable experience.
Right.
The DNA test is, a couple $100. Would you invest that into your health and wellness? But you have to have global adoption from the healthcare professionals.
But it's also the model, because as you're talking, two things come to mind is, I worked with residents in the ER that some went to California and became their doctors there, took their jobs there. But there's twofolds. I'll kind of like an analogy is I wonder how much about cannabis and therapeutic effects people learn in medical school, one. And then if, like, let's say you did your school and residency in Texas, then you go to California and you probably got to take the boards and pass your licensing there. Would you get any cannabis training because it is legal and because it ties into kind of a health modality? My guess is no. But the other part of it is, on the analogy part of it, is food is medicine. I think doctors learn fuck all about nutrition in medical school. And if you look at most doctors, I wouldn't take any nutritional advice from 3/4 of them. So, when you look at the parallels and go, okay, it could be, why aren't they teaching nutrition? Why aren't they maybe teaching about pharmaceuticals and, even kind of expanding it a little more as we go a little further into the acceptance and normalization of possibly psychedelics, um, you know, but it's like kind of like, insurance and medicine wouldn't be willing to adopt the test or kind of a standard of, hey, this is your profile. These are the things you should avoid in life, and this is how you can have the most optimal life. Here's your treatment plan. Um, they should be adopting some of these same things and going, well, maybe we should be teaching nutrition, and it should be like this collaborative effort, kind of like you're talking about. But and I've said this on many podcasts, is that all these things start off as good, caring for people. Somebody with a good heart started off and started these hospitals and stuff. But once everybody wants their cookie from the cookie jar, that's when it starts getting wonky and kind of furthest away from whatever it was ever intended to be. But what's been the most interesting, unforeseen thing that's happened because you embarked on this journey? And what I mean by that is, I like to highlight when people, um, especially people who are kind of against the grain, when they take that chance, like you kind of telling your parents this, that, being at odds with them, then joining the Cannabis Society, the active what do you call it? Activation, not activation. That group. What's something that's happened that you never would have thought in a million years because you had the courage to kind of be yourself, live your truth, and step out there?
Yeah. I just want to answer your question that you were asking previously
Uh-huh.
about teaching cannabis. So the endocannabinoid system was discovered in 1992 by Dr. Raphael Mechoulam in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
If I talk to doctors all the time, I would say that 80% never got taught the endocannabinoid system in medical school. Now there's certain medical schools that are teaching maybe a very, very light course on it. Same way as nutrigenomics and microbiome, which is extremely important as well. So this is something that we need to do a better job in medical schools and to get our healthcare professionals aligned with understanding and removing that, this is your brain on drugs stigma and how cannabis rots brains.
A more holistic, less symptomatic treatment.
Yeah, exactly. So surprising. I mean, there's so many different highlights. I was just telling my girlfriend the other day, I traveled all over the world because of this amazing plant and because of this amazing endocannabinoid system. I'm getting ready to speak on stages from Brazil to Africa and everywhere in between. And if I look at myself, as a kid, after, you know, oh, he's a stoner kid. He's
Being
this.
labeled.
And then all these people who labeled me, hey, my mom has arthritis. Do you have anything you can? It came full circle, like back to me, instead of being that person that had the scarlet letter. For those of you that know what that is, that was stigmatized based on he's the wee guy. Now understanding, wait a second, this is something that can be used as a therapeutic. So that to me is just mind blowing.
Now he's ahead of his time.
Yeah. It's an amazing thing because, I remember changing my LinkedIn profile. So when you're on LinkedIn, I had, you're a Price Waterhouse and all these other prestigious companies, and you have to come out of the cannabis closet. And once you come out of the cannabis closet and you're the CEO of a company that's associated with cannabis, that stigma is right there. So you have to actually, rip the Band-Aid off and say, I am doing this and I feel good about it. And I really feel like I'm doing something that's going to help the world. And that's the mission.
That's the same when I did my LinkedIn, when I went from healthcare for 12 years to big Catholic organizations to Uber Eats and podcaster at the Podcasting Connection Network. And, it's about the message, the content, because let's face it, through the airwaves and the internet, I can, you and I together, we can impact way more people than I can sitting in a clinic managing 26 people, and that's what it's about for me.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think the biggest impact that I can have is the individual stories. And I'll tell you two really, really quick ones. So I don't get to speak to as many people like that are customers of ours. I don't want to call them patients. I don't get that interaction as much as I used to. But I was invited to speak at this event in Brazil, in Sao Paulo. So I spoke, in Sao Paulo with a translator and all that stuff. Then I had a line of people that want to talk to me. And there was this one woman with her daughter. Her daughter was in a wheelchair, and she's on the spectrum, has all kinds of conditions. And she was trying to tell me that her daughter couldn't even make eye contact with her. It was just somebody that was living with her, very unemotional, nonverbal. So did our DNA test, had a formulation that was created for her specifically. And she's like, and she's crying, and I'm crying too. And she's like, I can actually have a relationship with my daughter. She says things now. She looks at me, look at her. She can engages with her eyes and still obviously we didn't cure anything, but it gave her a connection to her daughter that she never had before. And this other man was there, a younger man with an older woman, was walking in with a cane, and he was saying that before she did a test and took whatever ratio she had, she would sit in a chair all day. She couldn't get up. Now goes, my mom made breakfast. She gets up in the kitchen. She cooks. Yeah, she's still walking with a cane, but it changed lifestyle. So if we can improve even a little bit somebody's quality of life. I'm not talking about curing diseases, condition, quality of life. I really believe in the placebo effect as well. So if your mood is better and you can alleviate people's pain, you can help them sleep better. Well, it's already the ball is rolling downhill. You can help alleviate and cure ourselves. And I believe all the cures are within us. All we need is to have a little bit of the right tools to help us get there. And that's one of them.
Man, it's powerful stuff and straight to the core of a lot of the things I believe in. And, that's one of the things when you have a podcast, and I've had some episodes where, kind of like you said, you come out of the closet and you open up about, I use edibles but, I've dropped from 213 to 165, 9 prescriptions to 2. I'm a way different, I think, more in tune, better human. And, I think the proof is in the pudding. The results kind of don't lie. And that was kind of one of the things that I added to my life. Cut out drinking and added that. And, it's not every day for me, but it is, it's a tool. And kind of like some people, for some people it is every day. And I've had points where it was every day. And I think it needed to be every day because I wasn't in that place yet. But like any other sort of medicine, sometimes you take it every day, like a regimen of antibiotics. And sometimes like a Tylenol, you take it when you get a headache.
Yeah.
But I think it has wonderful properties, and I've been writing on it and thinking about it for 30 years. And I hope to see it go much further and, gain a little more, even more acceptance than it already has. And hopefully, we can continue to increase people's quality of life, and hopefully our systems will change a little bit and start thinking about people's quality of life instead of money. Because really in healthcare, everything's not curable. It should be to improve quality of life and add value. And I think with your company, my podcast, that's all I really aim to do is, just to be a value add regardless of the situation I'm in. But thank you for your time today. I enjoyed it, and I'm excited to get it out, and it'll be dropping roughly in a week.
No, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for giving me the platform, the opportunity.
Yeah, man. And I'll definitely connect back up with you, and I'm definitely interested. I looked at the site today, and I have my best friend who's also kind of same situation. Cannabis helped him with a lot of medication and stuff type, and I think he'd be interested in it. So I definitely would like to know and give it a whirl. But man, you have go out and have a good rest of your day and a great week.
Appreciate it, brother. Thank
All right,
you.
man. Later.
Bye.
Well, you've made it this far, which means you're probably a super fan of the show. That's amazing, and I really appreciate your support. To keep up with all the latest updates, make sure you're following the show on social media. You can find all the links in the bio. And if you've been enjoying the content, I'd be so grateful if you could take a minute and leave a review. It really helps us reach more people who might love the show as much as you do. Also, don't forget to tell one friend about the show as well. Word of mouth is the best way to help us grow. And if you're feeling extra generous, check out the link tree in the bio where you can find a link to donate. Every little bit helps me keep creating the content you love. Thanks for being an awesome superfan. I couldn't do it without you.
Let go.